Hello. Welcome again to the episode in the Let People Prosper series. My name is Dr. Vance, Ginn. I hope you're having a prosperous day. Well, today I'm delighted to bring you a bonus episode where I join Alex Meister on This Week in Bitcoin to talk about Bitcoin, to talk about some other things that are out there and that are influencing your life each and every day. I kind of dig through what's happening across the country, what's going on in the economy, and a number of key issues that you don't want to miss. We really have a great discussion, and it's with a whole group of people that we have a nice panel discussion that I think that you'll like if you go and check it out. So be sure to sign up wherever you can for his podcast as well. But here are the highlights that we want to get you to. So without further ado, here is This Week in Bitcoin highlights from the recent episode. And Congress keeps overspending. I mean, they've run up about 300 billion plus just in the deficit over the last couple days. This is substantial. Just in the last year, the debt increased by $2 trillion. We're on pace to continue to have $2 trillion a year deficits. The Federal Reserve is now talking about lowering interest rates on the back end, which is what's called Operation Twist, where they buy some of those long-term treasury securities and then they sell off some of the short ones. But why are they doing that? They're trying to help out with the deficit.
Welcome to This Week in Bitcoin. Today is October the 12th of 2023. Strong hand, long-term thinking. Bitcoin always returns to its all-time high. This is where the big boys play. Best guest in the space. Oh yeah, I'm bringing you this panel. This is the third time in a row. It's becoming a regular thing here. We're doing it monthly, maybe 2 times a month. Who knows what's next? Hello, my elite friends. Golden age of the 2020s is here. Vance, I got to start with you today, man. I got to start with you because in between the last show and this show, you wrote a piece in the Wall Street freaking Journal with Grover Norquist. So congratulations.
Hey, thanks. Thank you.
And you should be really proud of that, man. And I'm really proud to have you on the show. I don't know how many other Bitcoiners have Wall Street Journal writers on their show, and dudes that know like Grover Norquist and stuff. That we're gonna talk about that later. What you exactly wrote about and who Grover Norquist is. But first, the question that I didn't prepare anybody for really. I mean, this week or since we last talked, has there been any like Bitcoin mainstream news, crypto news that you know about? Anything that just jumped into your head or anything like that? Or have you not heard anything?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's going on since we last talked. And recently, of course, with the Hamas and Israel situation.
No. We're really but anything to do with Bitcoin.
I was getting to that because that puts uncertainty in the economy, and people want to jump to things like Bitcoin, gold, other things that are out there. Bitcoin in particular here, I think, could be a good way to have a competitive currency whenever you have so much uncertainty that's out there in the economy. And when you look at inflationary pressures that are out today, that's another good measure because the Federal Reserve is continuing to kill the dollar. And all the excess spending that's going on by Congress as well. You know, just for the last 3 days, I think this last 3 days we've seen over $200 billion added to the federal deficit. So this is unsustainable, and it's one reason why we need more news. I haven't seen a whole lot, to be honest with you, but we need more news about Bitcoin and things of that nature because this is where we're heading. This is what we need moving forward.
So yeah, I agree that the macro scene is really it's been dominating everything. There hasn't been too many Bitcoin news, but there's been something seeping up there here and there. So I'm gonna add, and you've got some good talking points there, man. You're like a presidential candidate during a debate. You know what the
Hey, don't put that on me. Hey, don't put that on me.
You're professionally trained here, man.
If Trump wins,
would
you have a job waiting for you?
That's a good question. Well, no,
I don't think so. I doubt it because I've been pretty critical of some of the things that's happened with the Trump administration and the shutdowns and stuff like that. So we'll see, but I kind of doubt it.
You left on your own.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I did.
And he doesn't. I mean, the loyalty thing. I think you're a very loyal person, but probably if you leave his organization, he considers you completely disloyal and doesn't want anything to do with you. I mean,
But the other thing is like I'm willing to serve my country. Like even going up there in the first place, I wanted to serve the country, try to put things in a better direction than when things were going. Talk about spending restraint and the value of the dollar or how they're crushing the dollar, international trade. Like these are the types of debates that I had while I was in there, and so that was a great experience. I mean, a big reason why I left. Couple of reasons, but one reason was because of all the shutdowns. I wanted to get to Texas where I thought there was going to be more freedom, which ended up being the case. And then also, there were some policy differences that at the end of the day, I was like, look, it's going to be better for me to be on the outside and talk about what's going on. But you do need good people that's in there. I mean, you can't just run everybody off in the process because that's really what we need, up there in DC.
Getting rid of FTX was good for the system in theory. But what happened when it went down to 2? Bitcoin hit $16,000. It was nonsense. It was insane. So it's going, Bitcoin doesn't care. Bitcoin price does care, especially during the years that are down market years, like be it 2019, 2018, 2022, 2023 that we're in the middle of right now. People overreact more so during these types of years. And I just want to put it out there that this is the reason I do talk about Elizabeth Warren and stuff, because if she did shut down Coinbase, if that did happen, if they did move to Dubai, geez, and if it happened this year, the price of Bitcoin it would be affected, seriously affected. Seriously.
Yeah. Hey, Adam. I mean, Secretary Yellen has been a disaster. There was a good piece out in Fox News here recently talking about Janet Yellen and the disaster that she's been on so many different levels by Kevin Roberts and EJ Antoni over at Heritage. But I was looking at the Bitcoin value or price today, 26,658. So one day it's down about 1%. 5 days down almost 5%. But if you look over the last month, as we've seen more uncertainty and things that are going on, I just posted in the YouTube chat kind of what's going on here recently with some of the uncertainty. It's up 3.1%. 6 months, it's down a little bit. Well, actually quite a bit, 10%. But year to date, it's up 61%. 1 year, it's up almost 40%. 5 years, up 315%. So we're seeing the way that the value can increase over time as people are looking for some measures of certainty, some measures of safety, which used to be gold, in a lot of ways, but people are thinking about other options now.
But I want to read a quote from the guy who's in charge of the Trezor. They're introducing a new Trezor, okay? And despite the obvious wisdom of not your keys, not your crypto, just 2% of the 420 million global cryptocurrency users, just 2% of the 420 million global cryptocurrency users practice self-custody, while most use centralized exchanges and hot wallets. So guess what? 98% of the people are doing it wrong. And there isn't something, it's just like a stock to them. It's just like a bank account to them. And they really do not take to heart the be your own bank philosophy, and it's not good. And who knows how true those numbers are, but you know what? From what I've seen, it's true. I mean, it's close to being true. 98% of the people out there, they're trading it and they just keep it there, or they don't know how to store it or whatever, and it's insanity. It's dangerous. And they're going to get hurt. That people are going to lose. There are plenty of people who lose it that way. And but the thing is, when that happens, then the regulators come in and say, "Whoa, we want to get rid, make it illegal as self-custody. We want to regulate these exchanges more." It's a vicious cycle that just leads more people to so-called safe exchanges, and they're not going to control their own private keys. So I just want to add that little stat up there. Going to
hey, Adam.
Yes.
Hey, real quick too, and this is a really important point about how you have gold or other things where you have government involvement. You have a top-down approach, which doesn't allow for prices for markets to efficiently allocate resources like they otherwise would, which is one reason why Bitcoin is so much more fashionable than things like gold and other things that are, the dollar that's being controlled by the Federal Reserve and other central entities. It's another concern that I have that I'm hearing from people all across the country when I go and speak is about the problems with central bank digital currency, CBDC. Because when the government starts getting involved with this stuff, they're going to crush it just like they did the dollar. This is another way where we don't want government to get involved with, because this will be an impediment for growth, for Bitcoin, for the future of our country and for the globe if government gets its dirty hands on what's happening with central bank with digital currencies like Bitcoin.
Well, they're gonna use the CBDC as a control mechanism over the
exactly
80% of the population. Yeah, but that's we're gonna have to deal with that when we deal with it. And they're gonna try to, and Bitcoin might get a bad name at first because they're gonna say, well, it's a digital currency too, and this other one's enslaving me. But I want to know, but Bitcoin, so that it will lead people to Bitcoin in the long run. But Vance, what do you think about digital over physical? Is it time to, because you talk all about taxes and lowering taxes and everything, but the things that can be taxed the easiest are stuff like real estate, because you can't just dump your real estate. You're stuck there. You're stuck in that house. So you're at the mercy of your local jurisdiction then. So, I mean, it makes people, I mean, I don't own any real estate anymore because it's too much of a pain in the butt. I don't know what fee they're going to give me next. I love this digital. I would only have digital assets, man. I think it is just the wave of the future. And I mean, Bitcoin, as everyone knows, is my main asset, to say the least. But what do you see? I mean, gold is an extreme physical asset. I mean, this is something from thousands of years ago. But what do you think about the world going digital? And pros and cons, and do you see more and more people doing it?
I've grown more in favor of it over time. I mean, I have some concern that the more we do go digital, does the government get involved, and then they can take that digital assets away more quickly than if we have physical assets to come into your house and take it. I mean, they could, but that's one concern that I have. But I think with blockchain and everything else, it'll make it's more difficult for them to go down that route like it once was. And so that's why people are looking at Bitcoin as the next step, the future of our country. And so while I do think that there are legitimate concerns, I think a lot of those are the same thing with physical assets, and that are maybe even more so given what's going on. What I like about something like gold, for example, and Andy would know all about this too, right, is that it has productive value behind it. Like, the dollar doesn't really have productive value behind it. It's just a fiat currency nowadays that's based on government debt. So there's not really a productive capacity that's underlying the dollar's value. Gold has that because you have to mine the gold. You have to have construction. You have to have labor. You have to have capital. All the stuff that goes into mining the gold. There are productive operations that are providing the gold. For Bitcoin, you have a similar thing where you have the electricity, you have the mining, you have the people, the labor, the capital. You have a lot of this that's going on. But I feel like from looking more and more into this, right, Bitcoin is less able to be manipulated by government actions like gold can be. Gold can, the government can basically just take all the gold. They can also manipulate the price of gold by keeping supply and demand on the market as they wish, versus the free market sort of approach that Bitcoin provides over a physical asset like gold. So I do think that the digital currency is going to be more of the wave of the future, and people, even with their concerns, are going to need to get used to this sort of approach moving forward.
But let's go to Vance and Wall Street Journal article and Grover Norquist. So do you personally know Grover Norquist, or was it just?
Yeah.
Did you? Okay. So does he know about Bitcoin at all? Do you know?
We haven't had a conversation about it, but I'll bring it up to him next time I talk with him. I talk to him pretty often. I'm a senior fellow at Americans for Tax Reform, and I've known Grover for about a decade. So we've been working together on a number of things.
Oh, wow. Explain who Grover Norquist is. He's been on 60 Minutes. He's been on everywhere before.
Yeah. Grover Norquist. So he's president of Americans for Tax Reform up in D.C. He helped to lead the Reagan Revolution back during the 1980s of cutting government spending. And then basically Reagan asked him, said, hey, you should start this organization. And they started ATR, I believe it was in 1985. And they have a taxpayers protection pledge where basically a lot of legislators, state legislators, congressmen and women, presidential candidates, presidents will sign their taxpayer pledge to basically say, look, we're not going to raise taxes. We can cut taxes, but we're not going to raise them. And they've had that now for, nearly 40 years. And so he's been one of the key people to talk with, to keep people in line from a fiscally conservative viewpoint. And he's one that I've really enjoyed knowing and learned from a lot in the process.
I think there's some critics out there of him who say, and I don't know if this is true or not, and you could talk, I mean, I know it's not true with you, that he talks about cutting taxes, that's his thing. But like, it's very important to cut the spending.
Yeah.
And he doesn't talk enough about that. I don't know if that's true or not, but I have heard critique about that. Maybe he's just, because it was such a revolutionary thing to, get these people to sign this pledge.
Yeah.
You couldn't get them to sign a pledge to cut spending too. So I don't know if you want to say anything about that.
No, I think it's legit. That's a legitimate concern. Now, him personally, I think he wants to cut the spending and everything else, but publicly, it was more of a conversation about taxes and making sure we don't raise taxes in the process. That was really what the concern was there, which is a nice leeway, if you want, to going into our Wall Street Journal article, because I've been talking to him for a number of years, and I've been working on spending restraints, spending limits with many states, and even at the federal level when I worked in the White House as the chief economist for the Office of Management and Budget. My big approach was, let's limit spending. Imagine that. And start running balanced budgets and everything else, which pretty much all states have a balanced budget amendment. And so they've got to rein in spending. How should you do that? And you do that through a fiscal rule, spending limit. You can use whatever metric you want. My preferred one is population growth plus inflation, because that way the government spending grows less than the economy. But I don't want government to be growing the same rate of the economy. If the economy is growing faster, there's more jobs and everything else. Why do we need more government? You should be spending less on welfare. You should be spending less on things, because at the margin, the productive dollars should be in the productive private sector, not in the unproductive government. And I think that's really important. And so what we did is talking with Grover and others. Patrick Gleason's another great guy over there at America's Tax Reform. And I said, hey, what if we do this for every state, have a spending limit? And we came out with what's called the Sustainable Budget Project, which is in direct response kind of to your point, Adam, about how ATR was all about taxes. What do we do with the spending side? And now what we're creating is a threshold to say, don't spend more than this. So that way you can sustain your tax cuts and everything else. Because I agree that if you're going to cut taxes, you need to rein in spending at the same time. That's what Congress always gets, and presidents too, get in the problem of, is that they cut taxes and they don't restrain spending, and we run up massive deficits in the process. It's a spending problem, not a revenue problem. And so in the Wall Street Journal on October 3rd, we had this piece, "The data prove government is spending too much." And we go through all this. I've been doing research on this for a number of years now. I break it all down in this piece. I put the piece in the YouTube chat so people can check that out as well. I also put a link to the Sustainable Budget Project, which outlines everything that we've been working on. And you can actually go to this link and click on your state. And when you click on that particular state, it shows you what's happening in that state for budget over the last decade compared to population plus inflation, how spending growth has been during different periods. And it shows a whole bunch of other information about facts and figures for each one of those states. So we're hoping that this is a one-stop shop for legislators, legislative staff, congressional people, and just the average American to go and check out what's happening in your state, and why are places like Texas, Tennessee, Florida, why are they flourishing when places like California, New York, and Illinois are not? And it's pretty simple. They have less government spending, lower taxes, and less regulation. These are the types of things that hold you back, and it's why people are leaving those states. They're fleeing those big government, blue states mostly, right? They're all blue states there, to less government, red states that are the other ones. And I don't think it needs to be a political thing. I think just looking at the public policy, I'm an academic, right? So I'm an economist and everything, and section of more government spending and everything else. And by the way, I'm critical of Republicans too. I think the populist direction of Republicans of more government spending and everything else is also a catastrophe waiting to happen. And so we need more fiscal restraint, which I hope is what this project will help with.
That you make a good point about the Republicans. That's Tucker Carlson's wing of the Republican Party. It is the populist wing, where they are going to help keep these jobs in these small towns by the government spending in these towns. Giving these incentives to these failing companies to prop them up. And I read your Twitter feed all the time. You're telling the truth here. It is not political. It is academic. You attack the Republicans too, and some of the crazy stuff that they do, the spending. That's why it's a shame that it's not just about lowering the taxes. You got to cut the spending also. You got to stop these ridiculous, because they didn't cut them. Now the Republicans are even trending. I mean,
and there's also talk though about a blockchain, a Bitcoin, something that you can pay property taxes with Bitcoin. There's that. Which I think, we talked about this before. I think we need to eliminate property taxes, by the way. But maybe there's other ways that you pay your sales taxes or something, other types of tax. Fortunately, we don't have an income tax in Texas. We never should. But Bitcoin could be a way to help to do some of that as well, along with the medium of exchange within the marketplace.
Well, I like your approach here, and Andy really has addressed your approach. You're if we look at the whole nation, yeah, it's like a Rand novel. But our nation is special because of federalism. And you are taking it state by state. And so it's up to the individual to decide, you know what, California's, I like the weather in California. I could put up with this horribleness, and maybe summer like this, maybe someone could share that. But you're really doing it. You're calling each state out so people can, and you've made it clear. So just to make clear to all the listeners, what are your top 5 and your bottom 5? Thanks.
Yeah, so the top 5 that we have are Colorado, which has had the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights, like they're a strict spending limit over time. You have Texas, you have Tennessee, you have Florida that's right up there, and North Carolina. Those are the 5 good states when you think about spending restraint overall, which you would normally think about. The bottom 5, as you might suspect, are going to be like California, Illinois, New York, Massachusetts is another one, and then number 5. I mean, some of them you might think about that would be a good one has been Georgia. Georgia has a lot of excess spending over time, and so it's not just red or blue. It could be a mixture of those, and you do see more of the red near the top, like the better ones, versus blue at the bottom. But there are some red and blue on the different ones that are there. So something interesting to watch.
That's why I moved to Colorado 17 years ago.
Yeah. Colorado's a great place. My family, we go vacation there every once in a while to get out of the heat here in Texas during the summer. And it's just a great place. I like Colorado a lot, and they've done some good policy approaches over time. I'm concerned about the Proposition HH that's on the ballot coming up. That's supposed to be for property tax relief, but really it's a way to diminish the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights, the spending limit, and not have those the rebate checks that are sent back. It's really a shell game. Their property taxes keep going up, and they're going to reduce the benefits of the spending limit there. I think it should be voted down.
Real quick before the show ends, CPI report. Vance, you were just tweeting about that, weren't you? All right. Any thoughts on that? Because that's the news of the day.
Yeah. So that just came out today. CPI inflation report year over year. It's up 3.7%, which was the same as it was in August year over year. If you exclude food and energy, what they call the core, that's still up 4.2% year over year, which is about double what the Fed's average inflation target rate is of 2%, is what they want it to be. So this is still highly elevated inflation that's going to continue for a while. And if you look at real weekly average weekly earnings, so you take average weekly earnings, take out inflation, it was down 0.2% year over year. It had went up for 3 months in a row after being declining for 2 years. And so now we're declining again. This is not a good situation. An average household is down $7,300 just since Biden came into office, meaning they can't buy as much as they could by $7,300 compared to January of 2021. And things don't look like they're going to get any better because the Federal Reserve's balance sheet is still double what it was before the pandemic. So before, February of 2020, and Congress keeps overspending. I mean, they've run up about $300 billion plus just in the deficit over the last couple of days. This is substantial. Just in the last year, the debt increased by $2 trillion. We're on pace to continue to have $2 trillion a year deficits. The Federal Reserve is now talking about lowering interest rates on the back end, which is what's called Operation Twist, where they buy some of those long-term Treasury securities and then they sell off some of the short ones. But why are they doing that? They're trying to help out with the deficit. Net interest payments on the debt are soon going to be $1 trillion a year, and that's with $2 trillion deficit. So basically, we're just rolling over debt with new debt. We're fiscally insolvent, which is one of the reasons why we're talking so much about Bitcoin and other things here on this show, which is a great conversation to have, because our fiscal house is a mess. It's a wreck. It's on fire, and there's no one there that really seems to care, want to do more about it. Yes, the Federal Reserve will probably raise interest rates again in November at their next meeting up to 5.75%, which will be the highest in 20 plus years. But that's not really where inflation comes from. Inflation comes from the Fed's balance sheet, from high-powered money that Lothar von Mises talked about, Milton Friedman talked about. These are the folks that we need to be listening to instead of these transitory inflationary pressures out. Even Paul Krugman, which I just tweeted about him a minute ago and put, the laughing face emoji, said that inflation is one. Well, how did he get there? Well, he excluded shelter, he excluded food and energy, and he excluded used cars. So all the things that people are buying, he excludes those out. And surprise, surprise, there's no inflation. This is just a ridiculous way to think about it. And again, it goes back to the Keynesian sort of Marxist socialist sort of approach that many of these folks have. that we've got to get away from because they are bankrupting our country in the process.
But again, it's already, we all know it's all over. Of course, inflation is way more than 4%. Everyone knows that. And now there's nothing they can do because the bond market is overpowering the power of the Fed to keep it down. The Fed can't do Operation Twist. If the Fed actually announced that, we'd have an explosion of interest rates and inflation everywhere.
Because it crowds out the private sector.
Yeah, that $1 trillion of interest is going to be $2 trillion very quickly.
Yep.
And this is going to go right into the Bitcoin halving. So the next year or two are going to be crazy. And
hold on, hold your hats, guys.
What Vance just said, it was very powerful, very impassioned, very truthful, and everything. And the mainstream media coverage of this is just the opposite, and everybody buys it. And so nobody. It's quite crazy the way they twist these inflation numbers. It has become happyflation, like I predicted. It's just normal. Be happy. You said no one cares about anything. I agree. No one cares about anything, so they get away with this. That's my premise.
And oil prices are going to soar, given what's happened over the Middle East right now. And part of it, like I agree with you in general. I think that the president shouldn't matter much, and ultimately I think that's what our founding fathers here wanted as well, but it's getting to a situation where it is mattering more. I mean, I think this Israeli Hamas situation is a direct result of the failures of the foreign policy of President Biden. What's happened in Ukraine and Russia is a direct result of the bad policies out of the Biden administration, and maybe it would have happened anyway under Trump or whoever would have else to be president. But I really think that there is a reckoning that's happening globally because of the incompetence of the current administration.
Vance, you closing remarks here.
Yeah, it's great to be with all of you today. Thanks for the opportunity. Keep the good work that y'all are doing. And check out that budget project from ATR. I think that'd be a good one. Also check out my podcast, Let People Prosper Show, where you can find on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get them. I also just post the whole video on x.com. So that way you can watch it there, because I know that really helps with their algorithms and everything. And so be sure to check those out. And vanceginn.com is the website. But yeah, I think there's a lot for us to keep talking about. I'm always, it's a pleasure to join this crew because there's always some good information. It's going to help me keep me thinking about new ideas and what to write about and everything else. So keep the good work. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode with Adam Meister at This Week in Bitcoin. We really went through a lot of the key issues that are going on around the country. Please go and give him a rating and review on his podcast. Also, leave a rating and review on mine, wherever you can. And please go and share it and look for all the show notes at vanceginn.com. So until next time, let people prosper.